Welcome to your journey of healing with the Healing Podcast, hosted by licensed clinician Monique Owe and co-host Dr. Amber Moan.
All right, thank you for tuning into the Healing Podcast. I'm your host, Monique Owe, and I am joined by my special guest here today, and that is Miss Audretta Jamison. So, Audretta, go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, thank you, Monique, for having me today to share a little bit with your listeners. My name is Audretta Jamison. I am a social worker here in the Atlanta area. I have a private practice in Johns Creek, and I think I've known Monique for, maybe 10, 15 years now. And I'm just very honored to be here today to talk to you about the topic you have for today. It's a topic that's, near and dear to my heart, and just happy to impart anything that can help someone else.
Yes, thank you. Wow, saying hasn't been that long. I guess it has been that long since we've known each other, Audretta. So thank you definitely for coming in. And we're going to go ahead and jump into it. So today's topic is domestic abuse. And so I'm sharing this topic today and having Audretta here because Audretta is a survivor of domestic abuse. And I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So Audretta, can I ask you, how long ago were you in a relationship that was one that involved domestic abuse or domestic violence?
My last relationship that may have involved domestic violence was about 10 years ago. And my situation is not unique to other people's probably who've been survivors of domestic violence. It was actually my second marriage. And so not only my second marriage, but my first marriage also was one that involved violence of some type. And what I want people to understand is domestic violence is not always, or intimate partner violence is not always the physical violence that you may experience, but it's also that mental, that emotional, or financial, or spiritual violence that someone may enact upon you. So I've experienced all of them, both physical, mental, emotional. So I'm happy to say now that it's been 10 years since I've been in a relationship that involved any type of violence. And I was just glad to be able to find myself in enough strength to get free from that.
Well, that's good. You know what, Audretta, I commend you and I admire your strength because I know any situation like that, it's definitely not easy. And it's definitely a challenge to have to face that. So I appreciate you for appreciate what you're going to share with our listeners. And thank you for being, sharing this intimate part of your life. So can I ask you, you said this was a spouse, right?
This was a spouse.
Okay,
yes.
This was a spouse. And can you tell us, let's go back to first, because many people, I think, assume, well, if it was violent, why did you get with them? Well, I don't think it starts that way. So can you tell us first, how did you meet them?
With my first husband, he was actually a cousin to a good friend of mine. And we met by chance at her house. We hit it off because we were all there just hanging out, enjoying each other's company. And he asked me out. And you are exactly correct. It did not start off that way. He was very charming, very kind, very considerate, taught me how to drive a stick. So, I've learned great things from him. There are still things I actually use today. So he started off as someone who was a friend in both situations, even with my second husband. Met him by chance at work. He was a very nice, caring person. We had an awesome conversation about things of the Bible, which is something that's also near and dear to my heart. And he asked me out. I said yes. And again, he presented himself very friendly in the beginning. So it's this trust that you build with someone when they're able to get you in a place where you trust them so wholeheartedly that they're able to then separate you from other people who are supports to you. And then that's kind of where the abuse starts. And it starts very subtly. They don't just come out and punch you in the eye on the first day. It starts with sometimes it's a controlling type of behavior. I remember with my first husband, he was very controlling, and he would ask me, "Where are you?" And when he asked me where I was, he needed to know the exact latitude and longitude. I was young when I met him, so I thought, oh, it's cute. He's concerned about me. And I did not realize that what it was that he was actually trying to keep tabs on where I was and what I was doing and who I was with. Because when they're able to control your environment and who's in your environment, that's how they're able to then get you to a place where you're so dependent upon them that they can abuse you.
Wow. So thank you for showing us. So this was the person you met in a comfortable environment. You said you met through your cousins, right? Something like that. And the other one, church.
Yes.
Was it church? Okay. So two places where you feel comfortable and you meet someone who appears to be a nice person. Like you said, you do you did learn some things from him that you may still use today. So if I could ask you, what attracted you to them?
With both of them, with my first husband, he appeared to be very calm. He was a great provider, which was something that I wanted because, as I stated, I was extremely young when I met him. I was 19. So I was looking for that stability in my life. And with my first husband, he provided that. And I will not take that away from him. Even on this side, he was an awesome provider. With my second husband, he seemed to be very centered in Christ, which is what I was looking for at that time. I wanted a stronger connection with my Lord and Savior. And the fact that he presented that drew me to him. So in both of them, they both provided at the time something that I was looking for.
Okay. And I think we said this, but I'll just ask it again. The relationship didn't start out abusive from the gate. So would you say, was it like a gradual build, would you say?
Oh, yes, ma'am. It was definitely a gradual build. With my first husband and I, we were together almost 10 years. And so in that 10 years, it started off with something just small. Like I said, kind of the controlling behavior. He always wanted to know where I was or what I was doing. I can remember when we would have a disagreement, what he would do was he would take the keys to his car, which had the keys to both of our cars, but he would take my car. So it would leave me stranded wherever I was. And I can remember his friend at the time telling me, don't you ever let him do that to you again. If you have to leave wherever you are walking, do it. But that was another way that he just exacted control over me. So he kept me basically in prison because I couldn't go anywhere once he did those type of things.
Wow. Listen to that. So can you tell me at this part, whatever you feel comfortable, what things did you go through with the abuse in that relationship?
Actually, what I've noticed on this side is how that relationship and even my second one really affected my self-esteem. To the outside world, I appeared to be super confident and have it all together, and I was a go-getter. But inside, I doubted everything. It was hard for me to make any type of decisions. And sometimes I still have that problem where I'm just immobilized by having to make the simplest of decisions, because what the abuse has done is taught me to doubt myself, because my self-esteem was just so picked apart. I was told things like no one else would ever love me, no one else would ever want me, that I was a bad wife, that I wasn't a good mother. And so once you have these just intricate parts picked apart from yourself, it's hard to look in yourself to find the answers to anything.
Yep, definitely. Wow. I can imagine it will affect you because it's a lot. It makes you question yourself. Can I ask, did you ever suffer any physical injury?
I never had to be hospitalized or seek any medical treatment, but I can remember one incident in particular with my first husband where he was upset with me about something that I didn't even do, but he thought I was privy to some knowledge that I wasn't giving to him. And he choked me. So he put his hand around my neck and choked me. And I'm not a small woman. I've always been fairly tall. But he choked me. And I can remember my feet leaving the ground because he had me against the wall and he lifted me up against the wall. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this man is about to kill me. And it's right as I felt my eyes rolling back in my head and I'm thinking, this is it.
Wow.
He let me go and he threw me on the bed. So as soon as I hit the bed, I took off running. He came behind me and shoved me, and he shoved me so hard I slid all the way across the floor into the back door and shattered the glass. So luckily, I say luckily, but the glass didn't cut me and I was able to get up from that situation, no broken bones. I walked around with a handprint around my neck for like the next week, so I'm wearing turtlenecks and I'll laugh at it now because I survived it, but I remember thinking, I'm glad it's wintertime. So nobody questioned why I had on a turtleneck then, but yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I mean, my listeners, I hope you're listening to this. Audretta's sharing her story, but we know many women, and I know men too, go through situations like this where physically they are harmed. You may not go to a hospital, but there is harm done. So, oh my gosh, Audretta, well, thank you for sharing this. This is amazing. I'm just astonished that you had to go through that, and I'm just amazed at your strength. So let's look at this. If going back, now that you can look back, what would you say was the initial sign that maybe you ignored it or you forgave it, that if it were to happen today, you immediately would say, oh no, this is not happening?
It's funny, in my meditation time, I've thought about this so often through the years. I think the sign that I definitely overlooked in that moment, I'm a mama's girl. I love my mom. That's like my ride or die. Mm-hmm. Shouts out to mommy, because she's super awesome. But I would talk to my mom every evening when I would get home. And, we're just talking, nothing in particular. We're just doing the things that girls do. Hey, how was work? What's going on? How's your life? And we would talk. And if I said to her, oh, such and such just got home, she would end the conversation, just wherever we were, no matter what was going on. And it was months before I realized that she did that. And what she said to me one evening was, oh, I always get off the phone because I can tell when you're on the phone with me, when he comes in, that makes him upset with you. And then what he would do was the silent treatment for days.
Really?
So just days. And then out of nowhere, 1 o'clock in the morning, you're in the bed, we're sound asleep, and he would just bam. Why are you ignoring me? Why haven't you been paying attention to me? And I'm thinking, what's the problem? Yeah. Because after 3 or 4 days of silent treatment, you knew he was upset because you can feel the tension in the air, but I never knew why.
Wow.
Had I known then what I know now, that thing where he was trying to separate me from my mom is the beginning of what it looks like when someone's trying to isolate you so that they can abuse you.
Well, yeah. I guess I'm assuming right now, what you're saying, if it's somebody you meet, or if you're dating, if they try to do some type of isolation or separating you from someone who you care about deeply, you would know, okay, that's red flag. I'm not going to do that anymore. Okay.
That's definitely a red flag.
Okay, definitely. So can I ask you, because people always ask, or they say, well, why don't they just leave? Or, why are they staying in something like that if it's abusive? But can you tell us and tell our listeners, why didn't you just, quote unquote, leave?
Oh, I remember thinking this one before I was in these situations. And everybody's different. Sometimes it's a financial thing. Sometimes you just don't even have it within yourself. Sometimes you don't think you deserve better. You thinking this is my lot in life. This is all I deserve. And with me, it was a couple of different things. I come from a family which unfortunately have seen lots and lots of divorces. And I had made up in my mind when I was a little girl that if I got married, I was never going to get divorced because I wanted to be the one to break that generational curse in my family. So I committed to that. So when I said to death do us part, I meant it with all of my being and understanding in that moment. Yeah. So for me, it was kind of that just inert, I don't want to continue this curse. And it was also, he was the major breadwinner. I worked, but he was the one who brought in the lump sum of the money. So, and unfortunately, or fortunately, because I love my little princess to death, we had a child. And I was like, I don't want my children to go through what I've gone through with living with parents in 2 different households. So it was so many things that I was like, we can work through this. And most abusers, they don't abuse you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. Something happens. Right. And we have that moment where we kind of cool down and we go into what we call the honeymoon phase. And everything is wonderful. They take you on trips. They buy you gifts. They're very endearing to you. And you go back to that person that you met and fell in love with. And you're thinking, okay, maybe this is over. And sometimes we don't realize when you don't see the cycle, that's just the calm before the next storm.
Wow, that is true. That is true. I think so. Hopefully, for those out there, if you're one of the people who question, well, why didn't they just leave? Well, it's not as simple as that. There are different things that come into play. I mean, Audretta just mentioned, it could be a spiritual belief. It can be like, look, I don't want to be divorced, right? And that's fair. Who wants to go through divorce? Who gets married to say, yeah, I want to be divorced? I think going through all that, if you had a child, you had a daughter, right? Your daughter was born at that time. Yes. So you're saying, you don't want who wants their child to have to go to daddy's house, go to mommy's house? You don't want to have to go through that. So a lot of factors play into why a person is being abused doesn't just allegedly leave, quote unquote. So it's more complicated than that. So I hope that helps answer those people who make statements on why didn't you just leave? Okay. So if I can ask you, how did you get the strength up to leave?
Oh my goodness, it's so funny. With my first marriage, God did bless us with a beautiful daughter, and she walked in, and she was 2 years old. She walked in, she's holding her little blanket in her hand, and my husband at the time and I had just had a disagreement about something. And I was sitting on the sofa, and I had been crying, and when she walked into the room, I was trying to, fix my face and not look that I had been crying or that we were upset. Because I always tried not to argue in front of my children, but she apparently had heard us, and she goes, Mommy, Daddy needs to stand in the corner because every time that you guys play together, he hurts your feelings. In that moment, it was like that verse out of the mouths of babes. That was a clear sign to me that I never wanted my daughter to think that this was the way that her spouse, her husband, her loved one was ever supposed to make her feel. And that's what gave me the aha moment. This is not how God intended for me to live. That's the day that I decided we were leaving.
Well, I guess thank you to your daughter for what she said at that right moment, at that right time. They said, you know what, this was time for you to go. And I'm just going to make a segue here, everyone. You know, we're going to take a break here and go into, you guessed it, the situation. So, you know, Dr. Moan is not here today. So I'm going to read your situation. So here it is. Dear Healing Podcast, the early part of last year, I got out of a bad relationship that lasted way too long. I'm grateful I got out. But the early part of this year, maybe around spring, I started dating again. The relationship has been good, but there have been some difficulties because my girlfriend has a mental health condition that she does not manage quite well, or as well as she should or could. During the times when she's not managing her condition, we experience a lot of arguing, other things, etc. Other than that, times are pretty good. So basically, when she's taking care of herself, we're good, but not when she's not. So the other day we were talking about moving in together at the end of this year to help with the cost of living because things are pretty high right now. My question is, do you think we are moving too fast? Well, Audretta, and this is so funny, this situation, sort of like another bad relationship. I don't know if it's abuse going on, but Audretta, what would you say? Do you think this couple is moving too fast?
That is an awesome question. Too fast is always subjective to the people who are in the relationship. As a clinician, my first concern is always to my client. And if the person writing in is my client, my concern is, are you in a place where you can deal with someone who is affected by mental health issues? Because as we both know, those have ebbs and flows.
Yep.
There are times when that person is taking their medication and everything's awesome and wonderful. And there are times when they're not. And then are you able to be a rock in that moment? Or does that situation pull you down? Because if we're both going down and no one's anchored to the shore, then that's a disastrous situation. So I would caution the person to make sure that they're in a place mentally and emotionally and financially and physically where they can deal with someone else's issues and problems and health concerns also.
Okay, thank you so much for writing into the Healing Podcast, and thank you, Audretta, for that feedback. I am going to say, I agree with Audretta. Saying whether something is too fast, too slow, it's subjective. It's up to the people in the relationship. But I would say, I think before you make the leap of moving in together, I think your partner has to at least, significant other has at least, she has to get herself a little more stable, meaning I guess I would want to know why she has those moments where she doesn't take care of herself. And if you guys can get to the bottom of that, then maybe consider, okay, now let's go ahead and make that other step, because my concern is her not taking care of herself and what, like Audretta said, what it does to you. It can't be good for you, and then definitely in turn can't be good for her. So I thank you for sharing your situation. So what I would say is maybe let her be a little bit more stable, find out the reason why. I mean, is it a medication issue? Is it that she can't afford the copay? You know, that's understandable. Maybe you can help her with the copay. But if it's just that she doesn't want to go to a professional, she's not going to therapy, then that's a sign. Because if she won't commit to taking care of herself, can she really commit to being in a relationship with you to give you also what you need, right? And the relationship is with two people. So I think make sure she gets stable first is what I would recommend before taking that leap. And so for those that are interested in sharing their situation, remember you can go ahead you can email support@thehealingpodcast.com. Again, that's support@thehealingpodcast.com, and you can share your situation that way. Or you can go to thehealingpodcast.com and you can hit the contact tab and send it in, fill out the form there. So thank you so much. And before we jump back into our episode, we're just going to go ahead and give a little announcement and space for our sponsor.
Are you someone who has been considering therapy? Perhaps someone else has told you that you need to talk to a therapist. Or maybe you're in a relationship and you want to discuss some challenges that you've been facing with your significant other. Maybe there's a communication issue, perhaps an incident of infidelity. Or maybe you just want to strengthen your relationship because you guys are thinking about taking another step. Maybe you're struggling with anxiety or depression, perhaps grief, life stressors, and you just want to share your thoughts with someone. Well, consider contacting Healing Expressions. Healing Expressions is a private practice located in the Atlanta, Georgia area. You will be given a session at an affordable price with a licensed therapist. If this resonates with you, consider going to healingexpressionsllc.com, reading about the practice, and hitting the contact tab to see if you can book a session. All right, thank you so much. And back to the Healing Podcast.
Okay, so thank you again for tuning into the Healing Podcast and jumping back into this episode with Audretta about domestic abuse. So Audretta, you shared with us some things you went through. What was the sign that gave you the strength to leave? Can I ask you, did anyone close to you know that this was happening?
With my first husband, anyone close to me, no. And I say it that way because that incident that I shared with you guys earlier actually happened at my in-laws' house. So it happened in the middle of the night, but of course, when the window shouted, everyone woke up. So everyone was like, hey, what's going on? And so, yeah, my in-laws did know that at least that happened.
Okay. Did they say anything to you about it?
I can remember standing there and I'm like in tears, but trying to hold them back because you don't want abuse is this funny thing when you don't want people in your business. Mm-hmm. And as the victim or the survivor, you will do almost anything it takes to kind of cover up what the abuser is doing to you. And in that moment, I was like, catch the tears, hold them back, don't do anything. And my mother-in-law asked me, did he hit you? And he kind of looked at me like, you better not. And I kind of just shook my head real softly, yes. And she made him apologize to me. But I remember thinking, oh, man, that was kind of like, hey, say you're sorry. Like something that she took it very lightly, in my opinion, now.
Okay.
And she never asked anything else. No one else ever asked me anything else about that. Even after he and I separated and divorced, my in-laws were upset with me. Like I had done something to him. But I remember thinking to myself, you guys were there. You saw it.
Wow. And you said no one close to you knew. And was that because you wanted to keep it hidden?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I definitely didn't want my family to know for a whole gamut of reasons. I didn't want them to, first of all, I didn't want anything to happen to him. Even though something probably should have, but that's not really, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
So I didn't want them to exact revenge because that wasn't going to solve the problem. I really wanted him to get help because he needed help for his anger. But you also don't want people to change how they look at you, how they see you. Because a lot of times when people know someone is a survivor of some type of traumatic situation, we try to treat them with kind of kid gloves. And even though in that moment I felt very small and very weak and very insignificant, I knew that somewhere within me was a fighter. And I never wanted to change anyone's opinion of me being a fighter or super confident or a go-getter or any of the things that I thought that my family saw me as. So I did not share that incident or any others.
Wow, okay. Yeah, and I'm surprised. I don't know why your in-laws didn't do more. I don't know. It's one of those situations. I don't know. People get stuck. They're like, well, I don't know what I should say or what should I do. Or they align with their relative. I mean, that was their child, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I hate that they didn't do more at that time. If I could say, if someone knew, well, I guess in this case, you did kind of answer this. You said they knew something happened. The only thing they really did say is they didn't offer you help to leave. They just kind of made him apologize. Yes. Okay, so yes. And we know your family didn't know. So okay, so no one else really did anything to help you in that moment. And so you didn't share with anybody, correct? So no friend, nobody. So no one really knew. No. Okay. Was your partner or this was your spouse? Were they so charming? Do you think that it was going to be hard for people to believe you anyway if you shared it? Did you think it was going to be that type of situation?
With my first husband, I definitely thought that because he had awesome people skills, but he also had this way that we were out with friends or family that he would belittle me. So if someone made a comment about, hey, you packing on a couple of pounds. Oh yeah, it's not because she cooks for me. It's because I have to eat out all the time. So ha ha ha, and he would always tell me, I'm just joking, he's lighten up. And so it was those jokes that were really jabs. Yeah. That he was really keen on doing. So he so often made me the butt of his jokes. I didn't think anyone would ever believe anything about that. So he was always super charming to other people.
Yep. That's the common theme. Most times it's like that. Well, we do know you did get out of that situation.
Yes.
That is in the past.
Yes.
So can I ask you, when you did leave, were there any resources out there to help you once you did leave?
I didn't know of any.
Okay.
Now, of course, in my course of study and in becoming a social worker, I have discovered lots of resources. And Partnership Against Domestic Violence is one of them. They have a national number, and they are super awesome at what they do. You can call the number and you can order a cheese pizza, and they are trained to know what you need, and they will secretively get you the help you need. So if your partner or whomever spouse is listening, they think you're ordering a pizza, but what you're really asking for is help. And
Right.
they start to connect you with those appropriate channels. And those are great resources for people who need that. As I stated earlier, I was working, so I've always worked. So I did have financial resources.
Okay.
So once I was kind of like, yep, this is over, I'm not doing this anymore, I was able to remove myself and my child from that situation.
Okay. When you left that day you left, were you able to go with family, or you didn't have to? You were able to go get maybe your own room
I
at that
went
moment?
down, I was able to go and secure an apartment, and my daughter and I moved into an apartment that day.
Okay. Can I ask you, how did you leave? Like, I know you knew that you made the decision to leave. You had the money, a little bit of money to leave. How did you do it? Because I'm assuming you had to sneak it because you couldn't do it in front of him.
Couldn't do it in front of him. So I kind of made a decision within myself to leave, and I slowly started just packing up stuff.
Okay.
So you're packing up stuff, and I'm moving it out of the house, taking it to a friend's house.
Okay.
And it was things that I didn't think he would initially miss. And so on the D-Day, what I actually ended up doing is, God has blessed me with a large family. So I have like 3 uncles, a dad, a brother, and they're all over 6 feet. And I was like, hey, I'm leaving him. Come get my stuff.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
his best friend was actually very instrumental in this, because I had confided in him that I'm leaving. And his best friend, unfortunately, was like, I think that's probably a good idea. And so he took him out of the house. So they went out to do something. So I was able to pack and get most of my things loaded up before they got back. And so by the time he came back to the house, I was in the truck, and he was like, what's going on? It's like, I'm done. And so
Did he harass you afterwards?
he did not harass me directly. Well, I say that, but he popped up at my job a couple of times. That's what he would do. And that was kind of intimidating for me, because you don't confide these type of things in your coworkers most times. So he would just pop up at my job, and my manager would be like, oh, Audretta, you have a surprise visitor. I'm, on the other hand, am petrified, because I'm thinking, oh my God, what is this man going to do? I was lucky enough that with my first husband, he never would hit you in public.
Okay.
It was always in private. So in public, like I said, super charming. Hey, I just came to check on you. Hey. And I can remember this one incident where I had a dog in that marriage. And when I left, although, I was able to take myself and my daughter out of that situation, I could not take the dog with me in that moment, because most apartments make you pay a pet deposit.
Right.
And so my thought was, I'm going to move and get myself to safety, and I'll come back and I'll get my dog. He called me one night. I had been gone maybe about a month and a half. And he said, hey, I just got home. Your dog dead. And he said it just like that. And I broke down into tears, because if any of the pet owners out there, if you're a fur baby owner, those are your children also.
Yeah.
And so he's like, hey, you want me to come over? I'm like, nope, I'm good. And I remember hanging up the phone, but that was the plot that he used to try to ingratiate himself back into my life.
Right. Right.
So, unfortunately, my dog really did die. I don't know how. It was a little suspicious.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm sorry you lost your dog. Yeah, I know the fur baby owners, those are your babies.
Yes.
So I know that was also deeply hurtful. So you see how a person can try, even if you can leave, they still try to find a way to hurt you or reel you back in. So I'm glad, Audretta, you didn't go back because of that. And I'm glad that the friend at least didn't try to make you say or betray your trust, but he kind of got him away. So I'm glad that friend did that. That's good. After you left, were there any challenges you faced?
Oh my gosh, it's always, that thing about when it rains, it pours. I can remember I left, my dog died like a couple of weeks after that. I was leaving work, and someone had broken into my truck. So, and they did not break one window, they broke 2. So they threw a rock through the back window, and it went all the way through. So it broke both the back windows. And it just felt like in that moment, like, oh my God, like there is already so much. And shortly after that, my job downsized, and I was last hired. So as we all know the saying, last hired, first fired. So here I am, single mom, dog just died, car got broken into, and I'm out of a job.
Oh my gosh.
So in that moment, that is where I will say prayer, and just having the ability, shouts out to my best friend. We are still rocking 21 years strong now.
Good.
Because she was a wonderful resource. Unfortunately, her marriage fell apart in that same time too, for different reasons. But she and I were lucky enough that we lived across the hall from each other in our apartment complex.
Good.
And so she was there for me. Between her and my mom, they pulled the resources together to pay my rent until I was able to find something. Good. So that's what I want to say to the people out there who may be survivors. It's always important to have a support system. Those support systems can be anyone and everyone who's in your life and who are seriously, as the kids would say, down for you. Because this woman who was not related to me was like, girl, I got your rent. And girl, I got dinner. And she was just making sure that my daughter and I had what we needed to just continue to get up every day while I was looking for a job to be able to make it.
Wow, look at that. Well, I'm glad you had family and a friend who were able to support you. So that is true. You need some type of support to get through this. However it comes, through an agency or family, friends, you're definitely going to need that support. And please don't let that stop you if you feel like, well, I got to wait till I get my support system in order before I can leave. No, don't let that stop you. The support can build even afterwards. You just get yourself to safety if you can. So if I can also ask you, Audretta, so now that you've gone through this, gone through that challenge, a huge challenge, you've overcome that. Can you tell me how have you flourished or what have you accomplished since leaving?
Oh, goodness.
Say this one loud so people know.
And even this was a journey because I left, and I've spoken a lot today about my first husband, but I got married again, so yes, I wanted to be married, so I got married again. But what I will caution you, it kind of goes back to your question earlier from our caller. I moved too fast for myself. So I started dating again, maybe 6 months to a year after that. Started dating, thought, this is it. Because as I said, he was a man of God. He read the Bible. He went to church. And I was like, yes, this is what I wanted. This is what I was looking for.
Yes.
And I was super awesome. He has a son who is now my son, and I love him. So, that's why I say I have 2 children, because God blessed me with a son that I didn't have to, laboring for. So thank you. But I remember he too started off super charming, super awesome, super wonderful. And we got married, and the man quit his job, would not work, did not work, just a different type of abuse.
Right.
Because now I'm struggling financially, because now I'm a family of 4.
Yeah.
And on an income of 1.
Yeah.
And so didn't work, and used the same thing that endeared me to him, which was his love of Christ, to browbeat me and make me think that I wasn't a good wife and I wasn't a good mother, and this is why God didn't love me. Just on and on and on. And it was harder for me to leave that marriage, because here we go again. I was the person who didn't want to be divorced because I didn't want to keep that tradition going in my family. And now here it is. I love Christ, and I know Christ loves me, but it was harder to leave because everything that I was living was the complete opposite of what I was reading in his word. So it took me a little longer to get that one together. But when I left, what I will say is this. Not only did I have a stronger relationship with Christ, I had a stronger relationship with my family and my support system. I was able to go to them and say, hey, I think this is crazy. What do you guys think? And they were like, yeah, girl, what are we doing? We're not doing this anymore. So I had the support there now. I was able to go back to school. I was able to tell some parts of my story, because I think you were one of the first persons I shared my story with in a different setting.
Wow.
And because of that, I was able to just kind of step out thinking, I'm not these things that these men told me that I was. I am awesome. I am beautifully and wonderfully made. I can do these things that God has purposed me for. And in that moment, I found my purpose. Because for years, I had been working in a career, and I loved the career that I was in, but I knew God had destined me for something else.
Yes.
So in that, I had a friend, Monique, who was like, girl, go to school, get that degree. And I went back to school, got my bachelor's, went back and got my master's. And now I'm working where I knew I was always supposed to be, but I didn't know why. So, this has been part of my story. I'm glad to be here, that I survived. I am victorious in this. And it's brought me on the other side where I can say, this is what happened to me, but this is not who I am. I was a victim of domestic violence, but I'm a survivor.
Oh, listen, that gives me so much joy. I remember that conversation in the parking lot. I remember it. And I must say, she has flourished, and she's going to continue to flourish. And I won't let anybody know that's a survivor out there, or maybe you're still going through it. Please don't look at your age. Please don't look at your situation or your circumstance. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It doesn't matter if you're a mother or not. The babies will be okay. and you can make it. So like Audretta said, she went back to school, and I can attest, she is a licensed professional now, as you see, and she mentioned her practice in Johns Creek, Georgia. And I know if you're outside of Georgia, you may not know what that is, but it's a very nice area. And I'm glad that she has her clients. So Audretta, if you don't ever pat yourself on the back, I hope you do. I know you give strength and all honor to God for getting you through, but still, you did that. And I hope you are proud of yourself. And so for anyone else out there, listen, this won't be the end of you. And it doesn't matter about your age. You can get through this. And some great things are coming to you once you make it through. So Audretta, if I can ask you, when we're getting close to the end, everybody, but do you think you would have achieved these things that you have achieved and accomplished if you would have stayed?
I don't know if I would have achieved these things, but what I will say is, at least for me, it took those things for me to have the gumption to go forth and do the things I needed to do.
Okay. Makes sense. I can get it. Have you been able to date again or trust men again?
It has definitely been a slow process. It is, I will say, what it has taught me is to honor the red flags. Whoever you are, women, men, we have that intuition. We always call it women's intuition, but men have it too. You have that thing, that voice in the small of your head, whatever you call it, your conscience, the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
Whatever you call it, you have that thing in the back of your head that's saying to you, listen.
Yep.
Don't doubt yourself. Listen.
Exactly. Thank you, Audretta, for that. Definitely. So if anything, this has taught you, if you do decide to date, or if you are, is to watch the red flags. So you think you have an alarm now that say, okay, nope, not you, right?
Watch the red flags, definitely.
Would you say any words of encouragement that you think you can share or that you have for anyone that is going through or experiencing domestic abuse?
My words of encouragement are, there is hope. There is hope on the other side. This does not have to be your lot in life. This is not what you are purposed for. And just know there's help. There is help out there. There are people who are willing to help. We can connect you with other resources. We can help you get a safety plan together. So if you ever get to the place where you find yourself in this situation and you've been isolated from those other people, just know that there are others out there who are willing to help you. And there's life after domestic violence. There's life after divorce. There's life after all of these things. And it's an awesome life.
Yes. Thank you, Audretta, for sharing your story with us. And thank you for imparting your words of wisdom. And I hope that our listeners out there, if you know someone, if you are the person experiencing this, or you know someone, please share this information, or please take heed to what has been shared. Audretta mentioned the hotline for domestic abuse, and I'm going to give you that number. That number is 1-800-799-7233, and the 7233 stands for SAFE. So it is 1-800-799-SAFE, or again, 800-799-7233. You can also text the word START to 88788. So the word START to 88788, and someone will assist you that way. If you have access to the internet, the hotline.org. The hotline.org will get you access to some resources and some help if you're experiencing a situation of abuse. And if you do have a police report, let me let you know. Audretta wasn't aware of this, and many people aren't, but let me let you know what you can do. Every state has something called the Victims of Crime Compensation Board. Some of them call it the Victims of Crime Compensation Agency. Listen, if you have even a report of anything that happened, that there will link you to access into resources where sometimes they can pay your rent for a few months, sometimes up to a year. They can relocate you. Let's say you're not a citizen. Maybe the person is holding you hostage with the paperwork to become a citizen. They can help you with that. They can just try to give you what you need, even pay for counseling for you. Because I know after this, I don't know, Audretta, if you or anybody, I think, would you recommend counseling after going through this?
I would definitely recommend counseling. And a lot of these agencies have in-house counseling. That's a great place to start. And those services are offered at no charge to you. So that's always an awesome place to start.
Yes. So there you have it. No charge to you. So don't think about the cost. The resources are there. And just please speak out. I know you're afraid. I know you're scared if you're going through this. And if you just got out of this, you're like, what do I do now? You're going to make it through these challenges. And you're going to come forth victorious. So, Audretta, before I close this out, do you want to share your resources or yourself, your practice name or any website or anything about yourself?
My practice name is Heart to Heart. So HEART, the number 2, HEART counselors. And you can reach me at Jamison, JAMISON, at hearttoheartcounselors.org.
All right. I love it. So as you see, Audretta is now helping others. So she's a counselor and a wonderful counselor at that. And with that said, I'm going to leave you with this. I'm going to leave you with 2 quotes for today. And the first one is, this is probably going to be for those who are still in it. It will be hard, but once you get out, you can live your life freely and get back the control that was taken away from you. And that is by a domestic violence survivor. And then the second one is probably for those who have gotten out. And here you are living despite it all. And that is by Rupi Kaur. I think I said that right. The last name is spelled Kaur. So I hope that has been helpful to you. To our listeners, I thank you for tuning into the Healing Podcast, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.